The coffee shop on Melrose was supposed to be quiet at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Keanu had specifically chosen this time, this place, because tourists rarely wandered in during the afternoon lull. He just wanted his usual black coffee, maybe a muffin, without anyone recognizing him. But as he stood in line, scrolling through his phone, a tiny voice pierced through the ambient chatter. "Grandpa!" Keanu looked up. A toddler in a high chair was pointing directly at him, bouncing excitedly. The kid couldn't have been older than 2, with curly dark hair and the biggest brown eyes he'd ever seen. "Sorry," the young woman sitting across from the child said quickly, not looking up from her phone. "She does that sometimes." Keanu smiled and waved at the little girl, who giggled and clapped her hands. Kids often stared at him. Something about his height, maybe, or the way his hair fell across his face. But this felt different. The child kept reaching toward him, making grabbing motions with her tiny fists. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" Now other customers were starting to notice. The barista was trying not to stare. This was exactly what Keanu had been trying to avoid. He ordered his coffee and was about to leave when the toddler's voice rang out again. "Grandpa, stay!" This time, the young mother looked up. When her eyes met Keanu's, her face went completely white. The phone slipped from her hands and clattered onto the table. I'm sorry," she whispered, scrambling to pick up her phone. "Emma, stop bothering the nice man." But there was something in her voice, a tremor that had nothing to do with embarrassment. Fear, maybe, or recognition. Keanu found himself walking over to their table. The closer he got, the more agitated the toddler became, reaching for him with both arms. "She's never done this before," the woman said, but her voice was barely audible. She was maybe 25, with long auburn hair and freckles scattered across her nose. Pretty, in a way that seemed familiar, though Keanu was certain he'd never seen her before. "It's okay," he said gently. "Kids are unpredictable." The toddler, Emma, was practically climbing out of her high chair now, tears forming in her eyes because she couldn't reach him. "Grandpa! Want Grandpa!" "I should go," the woman said abruptly, starting to gather her things. But her hands were shaking so badly she knocked over her coffee cup. The liquid spread across the table, dripping onto the floor. "Let me help," Keanu said, grabbing napkins from the dispenser. As he leaned over to clean up the mess, something caught his eye, a thin chain around the woman's neck, disappearing beneath her sweater. Only the smallest part of a pendant was visible, a flash of blue stone that made his heart skip a beat. "Wait," he said softly. She froze, her eyes wide with panic. "That necklace," Keanu continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I see it?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she said quickly, backing away from the table. Emma was crying now, reaching desperately for Keanu. "Please," he said, "just, please." Something in his tone must have gotten through to her, because she stopped trying to leave. Her hand went instinctively to her throat, fingers closing around the hidden pendant. "Where did you get it?" Keanu asked. Tears were streaming down her face now. I can't. Was it Sarah's?" The name hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her chair. "You know," she whispered. "You know about my mother." The coffee shop seemed to fade away around them. Keanu's vision tunneled until all he could see was this young woman's face. Sarah's eyes, Sarah's mouth, Sarah's stubborn chin. "Your mother," he repeated numbly. She nodded, tears falling freely now. "Sarah Winters. She told me about you, before she died." "Died." The word came out strangled. "When?" 2 years ago. Cancer." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "She made me promise to find you if anything ever happened to her. But I was scared. I didn't know how to." "Sarah's dead." Keanu couldn't process it. After 27 years of wondering, of hiring private investigators, of hoping she'd just decided to start over somewhere else, she was gone. "She never stopped loving you," the young woman said quietly. "Even after everything that happened." "What happened?" Keanu's voice cracked. "She just disappeared. One day she was there and the next, she was pregnant." The words hung in the air between them like a live wire. Keanu looked at the young woman, really looked at her, and saw Sarah's face staring back at him. The same eyes, the same smile, the same way of tilting her head when she was nervous. "Pregnant," he repeated. "With me." She pulled the necklace out from beneath her sweater. It was the same one he'd given Sarah for her 21st birthday, a small sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, hanging from a delicate silver chain. "She said you gave this to her. Said it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given her." Keanu's knees nearly buckled. He gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. "Why didn't she tell me?" "She tried to." The young woman's voice was barely a whisper. "She went to your apartment, but you'd already left for Vancouver. The Matrix filming, remember? She waited for you to come back, But then the tabloids started running those stories about you and that actress. Carrie Ann, Keanu said automatically. But that was just publicity. We were never— She wiped her eyes again. She was young and scared and pregnant, and she thought you didn't want her anymore. I looked for her, Keanu said desperately. For years. I hired investigators. I called everyone we knew. Where did she go? Portland. She had a cousin there. Got a job at a bookstore. Raised me on her own. The young woman managed a small smile. She was a good mom. Made sure I knew about you. Showed me all your movies. Said you were the kindest man she'd ever known. Keanu looked at Emma, who had finally stopped crying, and was now staring at him with wide, curious eyes. And Emma, she's mine. My daughter. The young woman hesitated. Her father, he's not around anymore. Mom helped me with her until— She trailed off. Until she got sick. Yeah, she nodded. The last thing she said to me was to make sure Emma knew about her grandfather. Said she'd regret it forever if she didn't at least try to find you. Keanu stared at the toddler. This little person who was, impossibly, his granddaughter. Emma grinned at him and reached out her tiny hand. Grandpa, she said happily, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm Chloe, the young woman said quietly. Chloe Winters. And this is Emma. I'm Keanu, she finished. I know. I've known my whole life. He looked at these two people who were his family, his daughter and granddaughter, and felt something break open in his chest. 27 years of wondering, of guilt, of thinking he'd somehow failed Sarah. And all this time, she'd been building a life, raising their daughter, keeping his memory alive. She kept this, Chloe said, pulling out her phone. She showed him a photo. Sarah, older but still beautiful, holding a baby. This was taken right after Emma was born. Mom said she wished you could have been there. Keanu's vision blurred. I would have been, if I'd known. God, I would have been there for all of it. She knew that, Chloe said softly. At the end, when she was really sick, she kept talking about you. Said she'd made a mistake, that she should have tried harder to find you. She made me promise to tell you that she never stopped loving you. Emma had managed to climb out of her high chair and was now tugging on Keanu's jeans, wanting to be picked up. He looked at Chloe questioningly. She's been asking for her grandpa for months, Chloe said with a watery smile. I thought she was just being imaginative, but the moment she saw you, Keanu knelt down and carefully lifted Emma into his arms. She immediately wrapped her tiny arms around his neck and rested her head on his shoulder. Grandpa, she said contentedly. Yeah, Keanu whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your grandpa. They stood there in the middle of the coffee shop, this impossible family that had found each other through a toddler's intuition and a mother's dying wish. Customers moved around them, oblivious to the miracle taking place at table 6. What now? Chloe asked. Keanu looked at his daughter, and felt his heart expand in ways he didn't know were possible. Now, he said, we figure it out together. All of us. Emma looked up at him with Sarah's eyes and smiled. Grandpa stay? Yeah, sweetheart, Keanu said, kissing the top of her head. Grandpa's going to stay. Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing people together when they need each other most. Sarah Winters might have been gone, but her love, and her daughter's courage, made sure that family would find its way back to each other. And somewhere, maybe Sarah was watching, finally at peace, knowing that the two people she loved most in the world had found each other at last.